This is the Stagecoach side-by-side silly shell shotgun. It is a side-by-side Nerf blaster. So that means it has two barrels. It takes two shells. These shells are called silly shells, and they are becoming a popular standard shell in the Nerf community. They can hold a variety of different ammo types. This blaster is now released, so you can find the printables page down below where you can get all the files to print one of these on your own. You'll also find the Out of Darts store page where you can pick up hardware kits, assemble it yourself kits, and fully assembled blasters. We'll roll right into the firing demo, and then I'll talk about some various features of the blaster and different configurations that you can put together for yourself. All right, so we'll unlock it with the thumb lever and then pull down to prime. Now it's open, starting off with single elite. Here's double elite. Here's triple elite, and this time I'll pull the rear trigger to fire both at the same time. Here is 6-inch bottlenose. One of them has a broken top. Here is 8-inch bottlenose. These ones don't quite eject all the way. Here we have 2 half darts in each shell. Here we have 4 half darts in each shell, and I'll fire the rear trigger to launch both. Here's a couple rival. Here's 2 mega. Here is Mega XL. Two more Mega XL. And then to deprime the blaster, I'll use 2 blank shells, so no darts in them. Those will go in, fire both triggers, and then I'll open the blaster partway to drop those shells, but leave the plungers forward. So this blaster is a prime on open. So to open the blaster, you push down on this thumb lever right here. That raises the unlock latch. And then as you pull on the front of the blaster, you prime the 2 plungers. So there's one on the left, one on the right. And when you pull that all the way down, it is primed. And then we can insert 2 shells, one in each chamber. And then when you push a shell in, it primes the ejection. And then you can shut the blaster and then fire, and each barrel is independent. And then when you reopen the blaster, the shells are ejected. Ejection always happens when you open the blaster. So if you prime the blaster, and we insert 2 shells, and we shut it, and we don't pull the triggers, and then reopen it. This ejection is timing based, so I put 2 shells in, shut it, and then reopen it. They do not eject until they hit a certain point in the travel, and then they're let go. The ejection sled in here is a dual sled. So when you put a shell in, prime the sled, you're priming both sides. And that means the shells, both shells always eject. It will never eject one shell or the other. It always does both at the same time. So how do you deprime this blaster? You want to use 2 blank shells. Blank shells have no hole through them, so air cannot pass through. So with it primed, you'll open it, insert 2 blank shells, like so. Shut it, fire both barrels, and because the ejection is timed in the travel, you will open the barrels only part of the way in order to eject the shells but not reprime the blaster. So we slowly open them. And then now the plungers, you can see on both sides, are all the way forward. So we have safely deprimed the blaster. Going along with dry firing, there are a couple other things you never want to do with this blaster that are a little different than other blasters. First thing is when you are priming and shutting the blaster, be aware of this danger zone in here. You can get your fingers pinched in there along with this slot here. So you don't want to grab in that slot. When you open the blaster and shut it, you don't want to put your fingers in here. They will get pinched. So you mainly want to handle the blaster from up here or on top. The other thing is these 2 orange rectangles here. These are the trigger transfer bars. So when you pull the triggers, it pushes a pin, and that pin pushes the bar, and the bar releases the catch. So if I were to push on that orange piece right there, the plunger would come flying up. It would push on this white priming bar here and shut the blaster on my finger very, very rapidly. It would probably also break the hook on the plunger rod. So you should never ever touch these orange pieces. Another thing you want to watch out for is these trigger pins. This blaster does not have slam fire, so do not try and hold the trigger down and shut the blaster because you will collide with those trigger pins. So make sure when you're shutting, your finger's off the trigger, just like that. Last safety thing is don't take it apart while primed. So you can see the plungers are back here, and I could pull out these 2 pins and this whole front section comes off. And then it's just like 2 tubes of compressed springs waiting to go off. So for safety, make sure you safely deprime the blaster before you tear it down. The unlatch mechanism here is done with a panhead 1032 Phillips screw, and that allows you to adjust the closing force. You want this screw to just reach over the lip, and you get the best seal when this is very tight. However, the tighter it is, the more difficult it will be to shut the blaster. This can be tuned just by taking a screwdriver and rotating it 1 turn, half a turn, a quarter turn to dial in that latching feel. When you're adjusting this, you're trading off your seal with the ease of shutting the blaster. So just keep that in mind as you tune that in. In terms of shell compatibility, this blaster can take any of your regular short shells, so shells that are within the standard length. It can also take full-size Mega XL shells, or any shells where darts stick out in front of the shell, that fits just fine. You can also take 6-inch bottlenose shells. It shoots these quite nicely and ejects these quite nicely. It struggles a little bit to eject 8-inch bottlenose or potentially sniper shells that have the metal barrel. It's less to do with the weight and more with the length. As these are ejected, they rotate due to gravity, and when they twist like this, the ejection stops. So it can take these just fine, but don't expect them to eject over your shoulder like the other shells. The other thing to note about this blaster is it has a decent sized plunger volume, but the shells sit around here in the blaster, and all of this space here is dead space. For things like single elite darts, this doesn't matter at all because they completely clear the barrel. For some of your wider spread shells like the 3X and 4X shells, this means that darts will rub on the barrels here and you will get a little bit reduced performance. That's the price you pay for a blaster this classy. This blaster has quite a few different configurations. First is all of the engravings that you see here. These patterns are called scrollwork. They're quite common on boutique real steel shotguns, and I've tried to emulate some of that here. There are a lot of different ways that you can print these. I do not have an AMS, so these have all been printed without multi-material printers. It's all been done with just layer shifts. For example, on this part, I insert a pause in the slicer, and at that pause, I change the filament color, and then I get this really nice contrast. On this part, you can see I've done 2 filament swaps. So I print most of it in white, then I swap to red to give me the red background, and then I swap back to white to give me the white foreground. So there's a lot of different customization you can do there. Of course, you can also print the engraved parts without any filament swaps, and they also look very cool. Very nice, subtle, detailed look to the blaster. Of course, the base model of this has all these parts smooth, so you can print them smooth if you would like, or feel free to add your own patterns and designs to those parts. The other configuration options on this blaster have to do with the triggers. There are 4 different trigger configurations. These triggers are staggered, so they sit next to each other slightly. And so for a right-handed user, it is most comfortable for the front trigger to be on the left side and the rear trigger to be on the right side. But for a left-handed user, it's the opposite. So you can change where these 2 triggers sit on assembly. So it's the exact same parts. You just change the order in which you put the parts together, and you can configure it as either left or right hand. This blaster has the triggers in their standard configuration, which is that the triggers are completely independent. So if I pull the left trigger, see the left pin goes, and the right trigger, the right pin goes. This blaster is a little different because it's configured to have the left trigger do the left pin, and the right trigger fires both pins. So you can dump both shells at the same time by pulling the rear trigger. And that actually physically pulls both triggers at the same time. And that option is configurable also on assembly. You do not need to print any different parts. You just print 2 extra little parts and add them to the assembly, and that gives you this dual trigger functionality. So there is right-handed standard trigger configuration, left-handed standard configuration, right-handed dual trigger configuration, and left-handed dual trigger configuration. And all of that is done as you assemble the blaster. You don't need to worry about printing mirrored parts or things like that. There are a couple other configuration options that I don't have shown here. One is the classic cutoff stock. So there's some different grip pieces here, and it's rounded over on the back. This can give you that cool action movie look, but it does make priming quite a bit harder. So when you prime this blaster, you tend to use the stock as leverage with your arm here or under your armpit. And you lose a lot of that leverage when you do the cutoff stock. So just be aware that with the cutoff stock, you will still definitely be able to prime the blaster, but it will be less comfortable than when you have the stock on there. There are also some options for grips with sling points. Sling points out the bottom here, and those come in both stock and stockless versions. And then there are also some files for Picatinny rails for the top here in case you want to be tactical. In addition to the blaster parts, there are also some other bonus parts. These shells are themed to the blaster. There's a blank shell, so completely solid, and then this 1x1 shell. This shell is unique in that you can rear load it, so you can put a short dart directly in the back like so, or you can front load it with a regular elite dart as you would normally. This is different than a standard 1x1 shell, which is set up so that you are not supposed to be able to rear load it. This is because most silly shell blasters vacuum load. That means that when you prime the blaster, you're pulling a vacuum with the plunger, and that can suck the dart out of the shell. This blaster does not have that problem because when you open it, the plungers are completely disconnected from the turnaround. So that's where these nifty rear load shells come in. There are a couple of assembly jigs that come with the files. So these are the two assembly jigs that you will want to assemble the blaster. These are not strictly necessary to assemble the blaster, but they make your life a lot easier when you do assemble. These parts are included in the Out of Darts printed parts kits. I've gotten a few questions about the name. In real steel firearms, a coach gun refers to a double barrel shotgun that comes stock from the factory with barrels cut shorter than normal. So that's usually an 18 to 24 inch barrel length. And these are called coach guns because they were produced and used primarily for guarding stagecoaches in the Wild West era. When valuables were still transported via stagecoach, there would always be somebody in the passenger seat with a double barrel shotgun to guard the stagecoach, and typically that was a coach gun. And that's where the term coach gun comes from, and it's also where the term riding shotgun comes from. Thank you for watching. Please head down to the description to get yourself a hardware kit and check out the printables page